The Interagency Working Group on International Trade Facilitation and Logistics held a meeting in the end of April in Kiev. The workshop named Assessment of Readiness of Ukraine for WTO Agreement on Trade Facilitation Fulfillment. As it had been planned during the meeting of the Interagency Working Group in February, this event was dedicated to the discussion of the preliminary results of the research related to the readiness of Ukraine to the fulfillment of the WTO Agreement on Trade Facilitation. The event was organized by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, together with the Interagency Working Group, and in cooperation with the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine and with support of Ukrainian National Committee of the International Trade Chamber, XVIII Association and Plasky Joint Stock Company. The workshop was attended by the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, UNECE Executive Secretary Christian Friesbach, by the management of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, a Secretary of the WTO Working Group on the Negotiations on Trade Facilitation, the World Bank, the Trade and Development Board, UNCTAD, the International Trade Center, the Ministry for Economic Development, the Interagency Working Group, an EU representative in Ukraine, the XVIII Association, as well as by the representatives from different authorities, public organizations, associations and business communities. The WTO Agreement on Trade Facilitation was adopted on the 7th of December 2013 during the 9th Conference of WTO Ministers in Bali, Indonesia, and will come into force after being ratified by 2/3 of WTO members. The agreement presupposes a differentiated approach concerning developing member states of WTO, including Ukraine. For these countries, the agreement's measures will be divided into one of the three following categories: provisions that will be implemented upon entry into force of the TFA, Category A, provisions that will be implemented by country using its own resources but it will need more time, Category B, and measures the implementation of which needs more time and additional resources from abroad, Category C. The key issues for enhancement of efficiency and competitiveness of the national economics at this stage of world trade development are facilitation, harmonization, standardization, and automation of trade procedures. Opening a meeting of the Interagency Working Group, Vladimir Shelkunov, an advisor to the Prime Minister of Ukraine and the President of the Ukrainian National Committee of the International Trade Chamber, highlighted that the Single Window Local Solution project has become a framework for further joint steps of public sector and business community. At the moment, the development of a new portal is in progress that will cover all the aspects of trade and logistics facilitation in Ukraine. Besides its technical functions, it will become a platform for exchange of views, collection and sharing of information concerning international trade and logistics facilitation in Ukraine. Stating the importance of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, Virginia Cram-Martis, a Director of Economic Cooperation, Trade and Land Management Division of the United Nations Commission for Europe, emphasized that this procedure is one of the priority tasks of today's world.
What does this mean for Ukraine? As a WTO member, what does it mean for the country? As a country suffering from conflict, and as a result of this conflict, falling exports, falling industrial output, and falling monthly wages as well as inflation? What does it mean for Ukraine as a country that shares borders with 7 other countries, and the Black Sea, which also allows direct access to 3 more countries, with all but one of them also being a member of the WTO and also being in the process of implementing the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement.
Virginia Cram-Martis mentioned that the implementation of TFA will extend the potential of Ukraine for costs reduction and enhancement of trading relations with 10 countries, which are the potential commercial partners. She also added that at this very time the government departments and authorities should realize that every change is a difficult process, so they should be ready for it. Ukrainian membership in WTO is considered today as a system-related factor that influences the development of national economics for liberalization of foreign trade and creation of a transparent medium both for exporters and importers. This opinion was shared by Maxim Nefedov, a Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Trade of Ukraine. According to his words, while restructuring the Ukrainian trading mode, it is planned to concentrate the efforts mainly on the 3 main tasks: to establish clear, mutual and efficient cooperation between Ukrainian government and the WTO, to fulfill the obligations taken by Ukraine accessing the WTO, and to support the Ukrainian exporters, business and community in its usage of benefits and opportunities that are provided after accessing the WTO. Ukraine is moving toward the accession to this package in a highly dynamic manner. This way, as soon as the agreement was opened for accession of all of the members at the end of 2014, the Ministry of Economy in cooperation with the Ukrainian State Fiscal Service preliminarily developed its provisions and submitted to the WTO a notification on Category A concerning the readiness of Ukraine to fulfill the specific provisions of the agreement as soon as it comes into force. At the present moment, the Ministry of Economy in cooperation with other executive authorities are actively working on ratification of the agreement, and these tasks is included to the program documents, including the Sustainable Growth Strategy Ukraine 2020, Ministry's Operation Program, and internal tasks for Ministry in 2015. Maxim Neferov also reminded that one of the components of the Bali package of agreements supported by Ukraine was the agreement on trade facilitation. Implementation of facilitation measures should become an important aspect in the process of restructuring performed by Ukraine because it will not be able to follow the sustainable growth without enhancement of the business environment or creation of clear and transparent incentives for all economic sectors and enterprises. Today, about 50 countries within the WTO have already submitted their notifications concerning the agreement, and Ukraine is one of them. And this high note, as Secretary of the WTO Preparatory Committee on Trade Facilitation, Nora Neufeld, started her report. She was also favorably impressed to know that Ukraine is really ready to sign an agreement on trade facilitation. Trade procedures facilitation for Ukraine serves not only as the assistance in estimating its readiness for the WTO implementation, but also as the realizing of the fact that it will improve the competitiveness of Ukraine economies. According to the data as of 2014, GDP in Ukraine has slashed by 6.8%, inflation is 34%, and the level of export to the CIS countries has fallen by 55% and in other countries by 24%. Due to these facts, it's not that easy to prove that trade procedures facilitation is a priority step. Although, according to the expert opinion, if Ukraine manages to reach at least the middle level of trade facilitation and achieves the results that are presented in the World Bank report on doing business, the actual revenue of the country will increase by 25%, while export will rise by 50%. Emphasizing the importance of the WTO agreement, a UNCTAD economist Paul Hansen mentioned that this agreement will provide additional opportunities for the country and will become an incentive for trade development, as well as provide new possibilities for government to review and revise the existing trade procedures.
Ukraine, it is extremely important that this committee is working well, that it is with the participation of all stakeholders, both public.
To discuss the level of readiness of Ukraine to implement the agreement's provisions, it is necessary to have appropriate knowledge and understanding of its basic principles in the first place, as soon as it is a new mechanism in the trade facilitation. And most of the staff in different departments and authorities, not only in Ukraine, don't have a clear vision of the document. The countries within the WTO have come to the only one decision: to ensure a smooth-running economy. The collaborative trade terms between countries should be equal. Unfortunately, some regulations adopted by the legislative bodies of Ukraine haven't been implemented in practice. Therefore, it will not be absolutely correct if we say Ukraine is ready for the Category A. It will be more appropriate to state that Ukraine is ready for Category C, and it points to the fact that today's Ukraine needs both methodological and technical assistance from those countries' members who are interested in Ukraine as in the transport corridor or a foreign trade partner. Our trade community and our private business sector have a demand for a change. It is not only a demand, they have their own vision of these changes and are striving to implement them. They do not want to be instructed on how to do that. The business should decide how to do that on its own. The cooperation between the government and private sector may be considered only in this very context, and the actual results will be achieved only when the fight is real, not ridiculous. When we implement the agreement on trade facilitation and reduce the staff that works on border in several times, as well as implement the recent developments in information technologies, every customs worker will be able to cope with tasks assigned by the government several times easier. Christian Friis-Bach, UN Under-Secretary General and UN ECE Executive Secretary, who was also present at the meeting, voiced his support to the work being performed by the Interagency Working Group in the line of trade, starting from a single-window project implementation in Odessa Seaport Terminal. He also expressed confidence that this work needs to be continued and developed to distribute this practice throughout Ukraine. Referring to agreement ratification period, Ukraine has already submitted its notifications on the provisions that had been categorized as of Category A. This is the first step of high importance. To ratify the agreement, it is necessary to go through the legislative procedures which are stipulated by the document. As soon as the legislative procedures come to an end, it will be necessary to consider some other obligations that were referred to Category B and Category C, and to review the measures where Ukraine needs support. With regard to some real actions in light of trade facilitation, they are simply confirmed by these events' context, single window and port community information system. These are the tools for trade facilitation.